Have you ever woken up with a heaviness you couldn't explain? That weight on your chest, the fog in your head, the quiet ache behind your eyes as if your soul itself hit the snooze button? You tell yourself it's just exhaustion, maybe a rough night's sleep, maybe stress from work, or too much scrolling before bed. But deep down, you sense it's something else. And you're right. Because whether we realize it or not, most of us are caught in a silent, invisible war. A war not fought on battlefields or in boardrooms, but within the folds of our own minds. It's a struggle we rarely name out loud, not because it doesn't exist, but because we've been conditioned to see it as normal. Feeling drained, unmotivated, disconnected from joy. We blame the traffic, the deadlines, the economy, even the weather. Yet those are only shadows of the real cause. The core issue, dopamine depletion. At the heart of this silent battle lies a crucial, often overlooked truth. Our brain chemistry is out of alignment. Specifically, one small, mighty molecule has quietly gone missing in action. Dopamine. Most people hear dopamine and immediately think of pleasure. But pleasure is just a sliver of what dopamine does. It's not merely the chemical that makes you feel good when you get a like on your post or bite into your favorite dessert. No, dopamine is the molecule of motivation, the fuel behind every spark of energy, focus, and drive. It's what gets you out of bed. It's what keeps you moving when life feels heavy. It's what reminds you that you're alive. When dopamine levels are balanced and healthy, the world feels lighter. Your thoughts find clarity. Emotions stretch out and breathe like sunlight breaking through fog. Tasks that once felt overwhelming become manageable, even enjoyable. But when dopamine depletes, everything changes. Even the smallest decisions feel weighty. You start dragging through your days, chasing one quick dopamine hit after another, a sugar rush, a TikTok scroll, another double espresso, never quite satisfied, never quite grounded. And in today's overstimulated, chronically exhausted world, so many of us are unknowingly running on empty. The worst part? We normalize it. We call it modern life. But the good news, and it's genuinely good, is that dopamine isn't out of reach. You don't need prescriptions. You don't need to escape your life or chase some dramatic life overhaul. The Stoic solution: reclaiming your chemistry. There are ancient, natural, profoundly effective ways to rebuild your internal fire, to reconnect with motivation, balance, and clarity without numbing out or burning out. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. This isn't about chasing perfection. Stoic philosophy teaches us that perfection is a false idol. What matters is reconnection. It's about reclaiming the small, simple habits that hold disproportionate power over your emotional and mental landscape. If you've felt stuck, detached, numb, or like a stranger to yourself, this journey is for you. Because when you learn to boost dopamine the right way, slowly, intentionally, consistently, you don't just feel a little better. You transform. You become sharper, more resilient, clearer, and deeply attuned to who you really are beneath the noise. A return, not a chase. Let's make one thing clear. This isn't a pursuit of happiness. Stoics didn't waste their lives chasing happiness. They sought presence, clarity, and balance, knowing that these things build a foundation sturdy enough to hold real joy. Your mental and emotional well-being isn't a luxury. It's the ground upon which everything else in your life stands. And it's time to rebuild that foundation, one simple, powerful step at a time. 1. Move, even slowly. Let's start where so many of us quietly fall apart. Movement. Have you ever noticed how a 5-minute walk can shift your entire mood? Not just your aching legs, but your swirling mind and heavy heart too. The fog lifts, your thoughts clear. It's as if the simple act of moving your body gently nudges your soul back into alignment. That's not a coincidence. It's not just the air or the sunlight. It's chemistry. Even gentle, unforced, non-strenuous movement triggers dopamine production. Your brain responds to rhythm, flow, breath, and blood. Circulation. In a world obsessed with high-performance workouts and 10,000-step quotas, we forget that our bodies don't need spectacle to heal. They just need to move. Not for the numbers, not for the Instagram story, but for the simple return to breath, balance, and biochemical reset. Yet ironically, when we're at our lowest, when life feels gray and empty, movement is the first thing we abandon. We retreat into the couch, the screen, the endless scroll, convincing ourselves we're too tired, too busy, too anxious. But that's precisely when our bodies need motion most. Movement as medicine. The ancient Stoics knew this. Cleanthes, one of the earliest Stoic philosophers, worked as a laborer hauling water through the night while studying philosophy by day. To him, physical labor wasn't separate from clarity of mind. It was the gateway to it. You don't need to lift weights or train for a marathon. You need to reintroduce rhythm into your day. A walk around the block, stretching while your coffee brews, standing up to breathe deeply between tasks. The medicine lies in movement, not measurement. Because here's the truth. Every form of stagnation, physical, mental, emotional, is a signal that something inside you needs motion, not more thought. You can't overthink your way out of depletion. You have to move your way through it. In those moments when you feel least inclined to move, when the weight of the world pins you down, remember, even the smallest act of motion is a rebellion. A reclaiming of your chemistry, a signal to your nervous system that you're not done yet, and you don't need to be strong, you just need to move, even slowly. A simple act of motion, a powerful shift. As we touched on before, movement isn't about spectacle. It's about reclaiming your chemistry. And it's in those exact moments when you feel least like moving, when you're slumped on the couch, endlessly scrolling, or sleeping too long just to escape the fog, that your body and mind are crying out for motion. Not a punishing workout, not a performance, just a reset. Every kind of stagnation, whether it clings to your muscles or lurks in your thoughts, signals that something inside needs to move. It's not a modern wellness trend or some slick social media mantra. The Stoics understood this. Truth over 2 millennia ago. Cleanthes, one of Stoicism's earliest and most dedicated thinkers, spent his nights hauling water and his days in disciplined study. To him, physical labor wasn't a distraction from thought. It was the doorway to clarity. His body in motion cleared a path for his mind to stay sharp. This wasn't occasional. It was his rhythm, his discipline, his way, and here's what matters. You don't need an ancient robe, a meditation retreat, or a fitness tracker app to follow the same wisdom. Imagine this. You're drowning in emails, swamped with deadlines, your brain fraying at the edges. Instinct says, sit longer, stare harder at the screen, fix it with more thought. But what if the answer isn't in another hour of grinding, but in a 10-minute walk under the open sky? What if the warmth of sunlight, the quiet of a side street, the easy cadence of footsteps unlocks the clarity you've been chasing? On a biological level, this isn't magic, it's chemistry. Moving your body helps regulate not only dopamine, but also serotonin, norepinephrine, and endorphins, a complete symphony of mood and resilience. Movement won't make your problems disappear, but it changes how you face them. It shifts your inner weather. And here's the beautiful part. It doesn't have to be perfect. No running shoes required, no stopwatch, no tracking app. Just start, right now if you can. Stretch your arms, rotate your neck, walk barefoot through your room with intention. If you're able, step outside and let your senses meet the world, beyond your screen. Not because you're broken, but because your body was never meant to be still this long. Motion is truth. A mind in motion, however slow, uncovers answers that a stagnant one never will. And remember, healing rarely arrives in sweeping dramatic acts. It returns in the quiet, consistent rituals of presence. Let movement become a part of your daily rhythm, not as punishment, but as permission. Permission to reconnect. Permission to release stress instead of locking it away. Permission to feel your body as an ally, not a burden. So ask yourself now, what simple, kind, nourishing movement can I offer myself today? Not what's trending, not what racks up likes. What does your body genuinely need? Trust it. Honor it. Then move, even slowly. Because within that motion, dopamine stirs, and with it, the long-lost sensation of being fully, deeply alive begins to return. 2. Eat with wisdom, not emotion if. Motion is the language of life, then nourishment is its fuel. So here's a question. What's the first thing you instinctively reach for when sadness, boredom, or overwhelm creeps in? Is it stillness, breath, reflection, or is it food? For most of us, the answer is food. Not because we're hungry, but because we're hurting. And for a fleeting moment, that bite of something sweet, salty, or comfortably familiar numbs the internal static. But here's what we almost never pause to consider. Every time we eat emotionally, we're not just feeding our bodies, we're rewiring our minds. And more often than not, we're disturbing the delicate chemistry that keeps us steady, motivated, and clear, especially dopamine. The food you choose, the mind you build. In the same way that movement stirs the dormant parts of your mind, what you eat shapes the very chemistry that determines your thoughts, moods, and energy. And here's where things get intimate. Dopamine, that essential molecule of motivation, is deeply connected to the way you nourish yourself. Every meal you consume either sharpens your mind and steadies your emotions or scatters them. The reality is simple, though often ignored. What you choose to put on your plate directly influences how your brain functions, how balanced you feel emotionally, and whether you move through your day with clarity or confusion. Foods rich in protein, healthy fats, and those loaded with the amino acid tyrosine are the raw materials your brain uses to produce dopamine. These aren't just abstract nutrients. They're fuel for focus, resilience, and a steady, calm sense of drive. But here's where most of us falter. In moments of stress, loneliness, or overwhelm, we reach not for real nourishment, but for quick fixes. Sugar spikes, processed comfort foods, and emotional binging offer temporary relief. They numb the tension for a handful of minutes, but leave you heavier, foggier, and emotionally scattered for the rest of the day. The Stoics, though they knew nothing of amino acids or neurotransmitters, understood this wisdom in their bones. They grasped a timeless truth. Discipline in what you consume leads directly to discipline in how you think. Seneca, the sharp-witted philosopher, once declared, Drunkenness is nothing but voluntary madness. And he wasn't only talking about alcohol. He was cautioning against any form of excess that clouds the mind and weakens our inner command. And food, especially in moments of emotional fragility, often becomes just that, an escape. So the question worth asking isn't, what should I eat to lose weight? Or what's trending this week on wellness blogs? The question, and it's a powerful one, is, what kind of food helps me feel mentally clear and emotionally steady? That's a very different conversation. It isn't about guilt or discipline. For discipline's sake, it's about awareness. How does your body feel after a meal? How does your mind behave 2 hours later? Did it fuel you or did it fog you? Take it a step further. Picture starting your morning not with a scroll, not with coffee, but with a meal rich in protein, fresh greens, and plenty of hydration. Before your brain is barraged by the noise of notifications and news, you've sent it a quiet, powerful message. I value stability over stimulation. In that choice, you've built dopamine naturally, not through caffeine or sugar rushes, but through genuine nourishment. And your body will respond. You'll feel calmer, more anchored. Your emotions will even out. The cravings for empty stimulation will quiet. Now, compare that to skipping breakfast or numbing out with late-night snacks. You'll wake up groggy, unmotivated, and your blood sugar will crash by mid-morning. Suddenly, you find yourself chasing dopamine through external means, scrolling endlessly, reaching for more snacks, snapping irritably at those around you. And it's not because you lack willpower or discipline. It's because your brain chemistry is desperately trying to compensate for what your food failed to provide. This is why eating with wisdom isn't about trendy diets or perfection. It's one of the most profound acts of self-respect. It's not about flawless, clean eating, but about the quiet, steady awareness that says, this is how I want to feel, and this is what I choose to put into my body. That's not a diet. That's an identity. That's self-mastery. And yes, it takes effort. It takes a moment of honesty to pause and ask yourself, am I actually hungry? Or am I trying to numb something I don't want to face? It takes strength to resist the easy fix, but each time you choose nourishment over numbing, you reinforce your emotional resilience. You tell your nervous system, I don't have to run. I can sit. I can feel. I can respond, not just react. Food is information. Every bite you take is a message sent to your cells, your emotions, and your motivation. And when you choose wisely, when you build your meals with quiet intention, you're not just feeding your body. You're shaping your future mental state, one plate at a time. Pause. Before you reach for the fridge, as we explored earlier, what you feed yourself, both physically and emotionally, becomes the fuel for your future state of mind. And that's why the next time you find yourself standing in front of the fridge, hand resting on the handle, or staring into a cabinet in a moment of stress, I want you to pause, just for a breath. Ask yourself one simple, grounding question. What do I actually need right now? Maybe it's food. Maybe it's sleep. Maybe it's to be still. Or perhaps it's connection, a moment of presence with yourself or someone you trust. The wisdom lies in pausing long enough to tell the difference. Because what you consume doesn't just fill your stomach, it shapes your chemistry. It becomes your mood, your clarity, your resilience. If you want to feel strong, grounded, and motivated, your choices and your nourishment must reflect that intention. Every bite is a decision about how you wish to feel tomorrow. 3. Sleep like you're rebooting your soul. And now, let's turn to one of the most overlooked, undervalued, yet profoundly vital elements of emotional and mental well-being: sleep. Real, unbroken, soul-restoring rest. When was the last time you truly rested? Not simply closed your eyes or dozed off with your phone still in your hand, but intentionally gave your body and mind permission to reset completely? In our modern world, where hustle is celebrated and burnout disguised as dedication, sleep is often treated like an afterthought, a luxury reserved for weekends or exhaustion-induced collapses. But here's a truth you cannot negotiate with. Your nervous system never stops whispering to you. It knows when you're depleted. And sleep isn't a suggestion, it's a biological necessity. Skimp on it, rush through it, disrespect it, and you'll find your mind dimming, your patience thinning, your energy and focus unraveling at the seams, especially when it comes to dopamine. You see, dopamine production is profoundly dependent on deep, restorative sleep. While you sleep, your brain performs its own invisible housekeeping, clearing out toxins, rebalancing hormones, and restoring neurotransmitters that regulate your emotions and motivation. Miss out on that process, and your dopamine receptors lose their sensitivity, which means you'll need more and more stimulation to feel a spark of motivation. And eventually, even those sparks fade. Have you noticed how even small problems seem overwhelming after a rough night's sleep? Or how the things that barely fazed you yesterday suddenly feel unbearable? That's not just fatigue. That's your brain operating with drained chemistry, like trying to run a city on a dying power grid. It can't, not well, and certainly not sustainably. The Stoics, though far removed from sleep studies and neuroscience, grasped this truth through experience. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most quoted Stoic emperor, reminded himself daily to get up and do the work of a human being. But he also understood the value of preparation. And rest, my friend, is preparation. It's the quiet act that equips you to meet the chaos of the world not as a scattered, reactive mess, but as a calm, clear, capable force. Without rest, philosophy remains theory. With rest, it becomes lived practice. Yet today, how often do we trade sleep for false productivity? Staying up late chasing unfinished tasks, doom scrolling through endless feeds, numbing ourselves in front of glowing screens. We convince ourselves we're getting ahead, but in truth we're borrowing from tomorrow's clarity, tomorrow's resilience, tomorrow's strength. And little by little, the interest on that debt catches up. It's time to reclaim sleep, not as a luxury, but as a cornerstone of your mental and emotional well-being. Rest isn't a luxury, it's a discipline, as we reflected on before. Sleep isn't just a biological process. It's a vital reset for your nervous system, your motivation, and your emotional resilience. One of the most powerful decisions you can make for your well-being isn't to hustle harder or grind longer. It's to prioritize sleep. Not perfect sleep, not some rigid 8 hours or fail rule, but consistent, mindful, protective rest. This is about rhythm, about honoring the sacred boundary that separates your day from your night. A line you draw not for performance, but for presence. One that quietly declares, "This time belongs to me. This is when I reboot my soul, dim the lights, power down the noise. Let your restless mind begin to soften. Give yourself the grace of a gentle transition, from doing to being, from noise to stillness. And yes, It won't always be easy. The temptation to check one more notification, to send one last email, to finish one last task will linger. But remember this, a tired mind doesn't think. It complains. It doesn't solve problems. It creates them. If you want clearer, calmer days, start with deeper, better nights. Protect your sleep like your future depends on it. Because it does. Create a space where your nervous system can finally exhale, cool, quiet, dark, free from judgment, free from stimulation. A sanctuary where you're allowed to let go, to fall and to heal. And if sleep is difficult for you, begin small. A consistent bedtime. No screens an hour before rest. Gentle sounds, deep, steady breathing. Not because you're chasing perfect sleep, but because you're finally honoring your mind's most sacred need, to reset, to restore. Ask yourself tonight, what might shift in my life if I began to treat my sleep with the same seriousness as my goals? Because each evening you honor rest, you're investing in the clarity, focus, and grounded energy of the next day. You're building a foundation that no supplement, no miracle morning routine can replace. You cannot outrun exhaustion, but you can outsmart it by making sleep a disciplined ritual of self-respect. 4. Sit with yourself in stillness. And when your body has rested, it's time to quiet the mind. When was the last time you truly sat alone with your thoughts? Not scrolling, not planning, not seeking productivity, just sitting, breathing, listening, in stillness. For most people today, that kind of solitude feels foreign, even uncomfortable. But it's precisely within that discomfort where healing begins. Where dopamine doesn't come from external stimuli, but from your own steady presence. Where the nervous system returns to balance. Where your mind, long scattered, finally comes home. We live in a time of relentless noise. Notifications, algorithms, background chatter, to-do lists buzzing in your ear. Our senses are constantly assaulted by input. And though these distractions keep us busy, they sever our connection to what matters. Our own inner voice, our clarity, our truth. The ancient Stoics understood this centuries before the digital age. They believed the mind must be trained not only to think well, but to sit well, to endure silence, to meet itself without flinching. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That wasn't poetic musing. It was a command to retreat inward, not to escape life, but to return to it more grounded, more present. And modern science has confirmed what the Stoics intuited. Stillness, through mindfulness, breathwork, and simple, quiet presence directly increases dopamine and serotonin levels. It recalibrates your mind's chemistry, strengthening emotional regulation and mental clarity. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, or sometime between, carve out 5 minutes. Sit alone. No phone, no music, no task. Just you and your breath. Watch what rises. Witness what softens. That, right there, is where your healing lives. Stillness restores. Progress. Awakens, as we uncovered earlier. Stillness isn't just the absence of noise. It's a profound return to yourself. It's a space where emotions are allowed to surface, where thoughts become visible, and where you reclaim the steering wheel of your mind. And the magic of stillness is this. It strengthens your brain's natural ability to regulate emotion. It rewires the mind, not for numbness, but for clarity and calm. More importantly, stillness hands you back your power. When you sit in silence, even for just 5 unbroken minutes, you step outside of reactivity. You stop running from your feelings. You let those emotions rise, stretch, and settle like waves on a quiet shore. You begin to observe your thoughts instead of unconsciously becoming them. You create a precious space between your impulses and your actions. And it's in that tiny, often overlooked space where transformation quietly takes root. Let's ground this idea in something real. Imagine you're feeling overwhelmed. Typically, your instinct might be to grab your phone, call a friend, binge on snacks, or distract yourself in some way. But instead, you pause, you sit, you breathe, and you ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Not to analyze it, not to judge it, but simply to witness it. And suddenly, the inner noise softens. The grip of that emotion loosens. Your dopamine system, that reward and motivation circuit in your brain, begins to quietly activate. Not because of external stimulation, but because of your own courageous willingness to be present with what is. This is why people who meditate regularly often report feeling more motivated, emotionally balanced, and focused. Not because they've escaped the world, but because they've learned to face it from a place of steady inner stillness. And here's the truth. Stillness doesn't have to look like sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop for an hour. It can be a quiet morning with a warm cup of tea. 10 minutes with your eyes gently closed before your day begins. A mindful walk with no phone, just breath and footsteps. The form doesn't matter. The intention does. You're not performing stillness for anyone. You're remembering yourself beneath the noise. So ask yourself, what might happen if I gifted myself 5 undistracted minutes of silence every single day? Would clarity appear? Would you meet an old grief you've kept at bay? Would peace arrive in the stillness? Maybe. And that's okay. Because stillness won't always feel good. But it will always bring truth. And truth is where real growth and emotional resilience are born. You don't have to be a monk to experience this. You only need the courage to pause, to sit, and to listen for the quiet voice beneath the world's chaos. Often, that voice, once heard, is all you need to find your way back to yourself. 5. Set goals and celebrate. Small wins, from that place of quiet awareness, we shift toward movement again. And one of the most overlooked practices for building dopamine, motivation, and emotional resilience is this. Set goals and celebrate the small wins. Have you ever noticed the oddly satisfying feeling of crossing something off a to-do list? Even something trivial? That's not about the task itself. It's about momentum. It's a signal to your brain that you're moving forward, no matter how slowly. That small rush of satisfaction you feel in those moments? That's dopamine. Dopamine thrives not just on grand milestones, but on tiny, tangible signs of progress. The problem is, most people wait far too long to feel proud of themselves. They save their celebration for when the weight is lost, the job secured, the book finished, or the healing complete. In doing so, they rob their brains of the daily reward signals that would actually help them stay consistent. And consistency, more than intensity, is what transforms us. Small steps, steady progress, following our reflection on the power of stillness, and the importance of creating space for inner clarity, we now turn to what happens next. Motion with intention. The Stoics weren't obsessed with success for its own sake. They didn't chase outcomes. but they deeply understood the value of direction, of knowing where you intend to go before you start moving. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's goal setting in its purest, most honest form. Not fantasy, not vague ambition, but a clear decision, followed by steady, daily action. And it's this consistency, not luck, not fleeting inspiration, that quietly gives birth to motivation. Not in grand, dramatic waves, but through small, intentional efforts repeated, day after day. Let's bring this down to earth. Say you've set a big, daunting goal. Maybe to improve your health, write a book, pivot to a new career, or strengthen your emotional resilience. If you wait until the day you reach the finish line to feel good about yourself, you'll burn out long before you get there. Your brain, starved for reward, will start to shut down. Dopamine levels will drop, and that sense of purpose that once felt so clear will begin to blur. But if, instead, you break that goal down into micro wins, drink a glass of water first thing in the morning, write just 100 words, take a single mindful breath when you feel yourself getting reactive, and then, crucially, acknowledge those small wins, dopamine flows. You retrain your brain to link effort with reward. And this isn't just motivational fluff. Neuroscience confirms that celebrating even minor achievements strengthens the neural pathways that fuel resilience and consistency. We literally rewire ourselves to find joy in the process, not just in the end result. Think of a child learning to walk. Every step, no matter how wobbly, is met with applause. Every stumble is followed by encouragement. At what point did we stop doing that for ourselves as adults? When did we decide progress didn't count unless it was flawless? Greatness isn't built overnight. It's built one honest decision at a time. And each of those decisions, no matter how small, becomes a brick in the foundation of the person you're becoming. Make it a daily ritual. Set clear, attainable goals. Track your small wins, not for the world's applause, but for yourself. For your own quiet psychology, keep a simple journal. Jot a note on your phone, or close your eyes at the end of the day and offer yourself a silent nod. I showed up. I moved forward. That isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That's dopamine being built deliberately, as a tool, not as a trick. And don't underestimate what this does emotionally. Every time you acknowledge a small win, you give your nervous system a reason to hope. You remind yourself on a cellular level that change is not only possible, it's happening. Despair is replaced by direction, and slowly your self-image begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as stuck. You start seeing yourself as someone in motion, someone who shows up even when it's difficult, someone who keeps promises, even the quiet ones, to themselves. So ask yourself now, what's one small thing I can do today that moves me closer to the person I want to become? Then do it. And when you do, celebrate it. Because momentum, like wisdom, is built one simple, brave step at a time. The quiet momentum of small wins. As we recognized before, progress isn't measured by grand gestures, but by quiet, consistent steps. The kind that whisper, I did what I promised myself I would do. And it's this steady, deliberate pace, not rushed, not frantic, that eventually carries you to summits most people never reach. Because he who rejoices in one honest, quiet step will one day stand at the top, not because he sprinted, but because he never stopped walking. 6. Listen to music that moves you now, let's shift toward one of the simplest, most immediate tools you have for changing your emotional state: music. Have you ever noticed how a single song can change everything? Your mood lifts, your energy shifts. The world feels lighter or deeper or suddenly more vivid. That isn't magic. That's dopamine. Music doesn't just entertain us, it moves us, quite literally. Neuroscience shows that listening to music you genuinely enjoy activates the brain's reward system, boosting dopamine levels and creating waves of pleasure, connection, and sometimes even unexpected clarity. It's why a melody from a decade ago can summon a long-forgotten memory, or why a simple harmony can stir tears. Not from sadness, but from a profound sense of recognition. Because music speaks a language beyond logic. It reaches the quiet places in us that words often miss. And here's the beautiful part. It's accessible, immediate, intimate. You don't need therapy, a journal, or a plan. You just need sound chosen with care, felt with depth. The Sabai or ancient Stoics may not have placed music at the heart of their philosophy, but the idea of harmonizing your internal world, of tuning your spirit to a deeper rhythm, was essential to them. Seneca, in particular, often wrote about the importance of rhythm and emotional discipline. And what is music if not rhythm personified? When you're low, foggy, restless, when the weight of the day tightens around your chest, music can become a bridge, a thread pulling you gently out of your heaviness. It reminds you that you are not alone. It offers a quiet, wordless hand in the dark. And the most powerful part? It asks nothing of you. It doesn't demand that you fix, explain, or perform. It simply offers a mirror for what you feel, or a reset when you're ready for one. So, let's make this practical. Next time you're stuck, unable to focus, anxious, flat, resist the urge to scroll or caffeinate. Instead, close your eyes. Put on a piece of music that resonates. Not background noise, not filler, something meaningful. Let it wash over you. Notice where it lands in your body. Feel how your breath changes. Watch as your thoughts soften. This isn't escapism. It's recalibration. Different types of music serve different states. Uplifting songs raise energy and spark motivation. Calming melodies ease stress and anchor you back in your body. Instrumental or classical pieces stimulate creativity and focus without overwhelming your mind. And sometimes sad songs are exactly what you need, not to deepen your pain, but to let it surface, stretch, and then quietly leave. But here's the key: intentionality. Don't consume music like you consume background noise. Choose it deliberately. Curate your emotional environment. Use sound as a tool, a steady companion in your healing, your clarity, and your growth. Create playlists that serve your different states. Morning reflection, focused work, evening stillness, movement, or grief. Let them be yours. Not what's popular, but what stirs something real inside you. The hidden power of sound. The quiet gift of music. As we just explored, music isn't mere background noise. It's alignment, a way to recalibrate your inner world when logic and routine fall short. And you'd be surprised how often motivation doesn't come from a carefully planned to-do list or a motivational quote, but from a single melody that shakes the dust off your soul and quietly reminds you of who you are. That's the hidden power of sound, not as distraction, but as alignment. And emotionally, this changes everything. Because sometimes You don't need to fix how you feel. You don't need to dissect, numb, or analyze it. You simply need to feel it fully and let it move through you. Music gives you that space, that movement, that release. So ask yourself, what's the soundtrack to the version of me I'm becoming? What music stirs the parts of you that have been quiet for too long? Play it, feel it, let it move within you. Because what cannot be said in words, music will carry. 7. Surround yourself with nourishing relationships. Now, let's talk about another invisible force shaping your emotional landscape, the people you keep around you. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling lighter, more understood, more alive? And on the flip side, have you left an interaction feeling small, tense, or quietly ashamed? That contrast isn't random. It's not just about personalities. It's chemical. Relationships literally shape your brain. The people you allow into your world directly affect your dopamine levels, your emotional resilience, your self-worth, and your motivation. Human connection isn't a bonus. It's essential for mental and emotional health. Dopamine rises in the presence of authentic, genuine connection. Not surface-level exchanges, not the endless texting, the half-hearted small talk, or the empty social performances. What your nervous system craves, what your soul truly aches for, is real presence. Being with someone who truly listens, not someone waiting for their turn to speak. Someone who sees you beyond your roles, beyond your mask, beyond your current struggle. Someone who doesn't demand you be more, but whose very presence naturally reminds you of who you already are. The Stoics spoke often of friendship, but not the transactional kind. Seneca wrote, "One of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood. And that kind of bond does something extraordinary for your mind. It steadies your inner world, offers you perspective, and eases the weight of daily life. It isn't loud. It isn't performative. It's calm, steady, and solid." Now contrast that with toxic relationships, the ones where you feel small, anxious, chronically unseen. Your brain senses threat in those dynamics. It shifts into survival mode. Dopamine plummets, focus splinters. Your energy becomes reactive, not creative. And slowly, often without noticing, you shrink. You question yourself. You live more on edge and less in peace. And here's the truth. You don't need a crowd to stay mentally healthy. In fact, sometimes the crowd is the very thing draining you. What matters isn't quantity, it's quality. One or two people who make you laugh from the gut, who challenge you gently, who energize you, those are worth more than 1,000 hollow connections. Because every interaction is an input. And over time, your brain, your self-image, your motivation become what they're most consistently exposed to. So, let's get practical. Start paying attention after every social interaction. How do you feel? Energized or drained? Calm or restless? Clear or confused? That's not just mood. That's biology speaking to you. The more you honor those signals, the more you can shape a social environment that supports your mental and emotional chemistry rather than sabotages it. And equally important, be that kind of presence for others. Listen without fixing. Celebrate without comparison. Show up without performance. Be the energy you wish someone would bring to you, because connection is a mirror. And when you offer that kind of space to someone else, you create conditions for real reciprocity, not obligation, not drama, but mutual elevation. Choose your company. Guard your energy. As we acknowledged before, the people you surround yourself with quietly shape your emotional chemistry. So if you're feeling heavy, unmotivated, or emotionally numb, don't just look inward. Look around you. Who's in your space? Who has direct access to your mind, your energy, your precious time? And here's the harder question. Do they truly deserve that access? This isn't about harsh judgment or cutting people off with cold detachment. It's about protecting your peace. Because in the end, your environment, both the one inside your head and the one you physically inhabit, is the architecture of your well-being. And sometimes the most powerful step you can take toward a clearer, more motivated, more balanced mind isn't another self-help practice or productivity hack. It's choosing to walk with better people. So pause and ask yourself, who lifts me effortlessly? Who makes me feel more like myself? Who am I quietly becoming by the company I keep? Because a real friend doesn't exhaust you. They restore you. And that kind of connection isn't a luxury. It's medicine. 8. Let the sun touch your skin. And while we're on the subject of natural medicine, let's talk about one of the simplest, most overlooked tools you have for restoring clarity and motivation: sunlight. When was the last time you simply stepped outside? Not to run an errand, not to check your phone, not to get somewhere, but just to feel the sunlight on your face, to notice the warmth against your skin, to reconnect with a force older than any philosophy. We've become so accustomed to artificial environments, fluorescent lighting, recirculated air, glass screens, that we forget our bodies were never designed for a life indoors. We're not just minds and muscles, we're biology, we're chemistry. And sunlight isn't just warmth, it's a biological signal, a natural trigger that plays a powerful, irreplaceable role in how we think, feel, and function. Science confirms what ancient wisdom intuited. Sunlight boosts the body's production of vitamin D, which regulates mood, immunity, and sleep. But equally important, exposure to natural sunlight directly increases dopamine levels in the brain, especially in the areas responsible for motivation, focus, and mood stability. Morning light, in particular, stimulates these dopamine pathways, helping you feel more awake, alert, and emotionally steady. This isn't spiritual fluff, it's neuroscience, and the Stoics, though they knew nothing of ultraviolet rays or circadian rhythms, understood this truth through lived experience. Marcus Aurelius found clarity beneath the stars. Seneca wrote about rivers, trees, and mountain paths. To them, nature wasn't a backdrop for life. It was life. It was where wisdom lived, where the mind could find perspective, where the soul could reset. Yet in our modern world, most of us lives severed from this natural rhythm. We sleep through sunrises, draw curtains against the daylight, and spend our best hours under artificial glow, hunched over glowing rectangles. And then we wonder why we feel foggy, restless, short-tempered. It isn't weakness, it's misalignment. Your nervous system was designed to respond to sunlight. It's the original signal for your inner clock, your circadian rhythm. Ignore it, and your dopamine suffers. Your sleep destabilizes. Your resilience weakens. But here's the beautiful truth. The solution is simple, human, accessible. Step outside, even for 5 minutes. Even if the sky is overcast. Let your eyes, without sunglasses, absorb natural light. Let your skin feel the coolness of a breeze, the warmth of a gentle sunbeam. Even that small ritual begins to realign your system. It reminds your biology that you're still part of a world beyond walls. Reconnect with what grounds. You, as we reflected on the healing touch of sunlight and the quiet wisdom of nature, let's stay with that simplicity a little longer. Because what happens when you step outside isn't just about light or dopamine. It's about presence. So next time, as you let the sun warm your skin, let your breath slow down. Leave your phone behind. Resist the itch to check notifications. Just stand there. Walk. Be. It's in these small, unhurried moments that your nervous system recalibrates, that your mind quietly drifts back to center. This isn't about turning nature into a productivity hack. It's not about sunbathing for health points. It's about remembering a simple, powerful truth. You belong to the world, not just the internet. And the world, the real, physical, grounded world, has its own ancient medicine. A kind no screen, no vitamin, no podcast can replicate. The quiet flicker of light on leaves, the warmth against your skin, the steady hush of wind through trees. These aren't distractions. They're resets. And when you turn this from an occasional indulgence into a daily habit, something remarkable happens. Your mood lifts, anxiety lowers, sleep deepens, thoughts stretch out and breathe. You begin to notice small beauties in things you used to speed past. The way sunlight filters through blinds, how the air smells before rain. And slowly, your brain begins to thank you. Dopamine starts to flow not from frantic chasing, but from simply being. So ask yourself honestly, when was the last time I let the sun touch my face without distraction? What might shift in my life if tomorrow morning I reached for the sky before I reached for a screen? Because what a book or podcast can't always heal, the morning light sometimes can. 9. Do what you love, not just what's expected. And now, from the outer world back inward, let's talk about joy. When did you stop doing things just because they made you feel alive? When did simple pleasure become something you had to justify, schedule, or postpone for when everything else was done? Somewhere along the slow march into adulthood, many of us traded what we naturally love for what we're supposed to do. And in that silent exchange, something essential slipped away. Our natural connection to dopamine, not the cheap kind from likes and notifications. The deep, steady kind that flows when you do things that awaken your spirit, not just check off another task. Doing what you love, whether it's painting, cooking, building, writing, gardening, running, playing music, reading fiction, or simply sitting quietly in nature, isn't a luxury. It's a neurological necessity. The activities that fully engage your attention, that create joy from within, activate your brain's reward system in a way no quick dopamine hit ever could. They create sustainable, balanced motivation, the kind that lingers, not crashes, and the more time you spend immersed in those passions, the steadier, clearer, and more emotionally resilient you become. The Stoics believed in duty, yes, but they also believed in eudaimonia, the flourishing of the soul. They didn't separate virtue from joy. They knew that to live in alignment with your nature is to live with clarity, strength, and, yes, pleasure. Not indulgent, empty pleasure, but the deep fulfillment that comes from expressing the truth of who you are. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So how often do your thoughts turn toward what truly stirs you? Let's make this real. Think back to a time you were completely absorbed in something you loved. Hours passed like minutes. Worries faded. Your mind sharpened. You weren't thinking about being productive. You were just present, fully, alive in the doing. Make space for what awakens you. As we reflected before, the joy you feel while doing what you love isn't a luxury. It's nourishment. It creates focus without force, energy without strain, and clarity without the need for caffeine or external validation. But too often, we abandon those simple, life-giving activities in the name of responsibility. We tell ourselves we don't have time, that it isn't productive, that someday, when everything else is done, we'll return to it. But here's the unvarnished truth. If you don't make space for what fuels you, you'll burn out doing what drains you. There is no virtue in self-abandonment, and there's little wisdom in living only for what others expect. Start small. Carve out just 15 minutes for something that brings you quiet joy, and guard it fiercely as though your well-being depends on it. Because it does. Let yourself enjoy without explanation. Let yourself create without perfection. Let yourself remember who you were before the world told you what you had to become. No, this doesn't mean quitting your job or running from your duties. It means reclaiming a forgotten part of yourself. Your curiosity, your wonder, your creative fire. Because when you water that part of your spirit, everything else flourishes. Your mood lightens. Your resilience strengthens. Dopamine flows, not from proving, but from being. So pause and ask yourself, what did I once love that I've neglected? What small act of joy could I return to today? Don't wait for permission. Don't wait until you have time. Make time. Not because it's urgent, but because it's essential. Happiness isn't a final destination. It's a practice. And it begins by giving yourself permission to do what enlivens you, without apology. 10. Release stress. Don't just resist it now. Let's turn toward one of the most overlooked aspects of mental and emotional health: stress. How much of your daily energy is spent just holding it all together? Smiling when your chest feels heavy, showing up for others while your own mind quietly begs for stillness, telling yourself to be strong while your body aches for rest. We live in a world that glorifies resilience but deeply misunderstands it. True resilience isn't about white-knuckling your way through stress until you collapse. It's about knowing when and how to release it, to let it move through you, without letting it own you. Chronic stress is one of the most dangerous, silent thieves of clarity and emotional balance. It drains your nervous system, clouds your thinking, and disrupts dopamine production. Over time, it rewires your brain to expect pressure, to distrust stillness, to equate rest with failure. And the longer stress stays stuck in your system, the more it quietly controls your mood, your focus, and your will to move forward. But the Stoics understood something essential. You can't control what life throws at you, but you can control how you respond. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And this doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending everything's fine. It means making space to process what you carry, wisely, gently, intentionally. The problem is, most of us don't truly release stress. We either store it, tightening our shoulders, grinding our jaws, or numb it with scrolling, snacking, or distraction. But emotion is energy. And what isn't released doesn't disappear. It builds. It morphs into anxiety, restlessness, fatigue, even burnout. Releasing stress isn't weakness. It's the act that allows your nervous system to reset and your dopamine levels to recover naturally. So what does release actually look like? Sometimes it's physical. A long walk, deep breathing, stretching, cold showers, or vigorous movement. Sometimes it's emotional. Crying without shame, journaling without editing, speaking with someone who truly sees you and doesn't try to fix you. The wisdom of release, as we explored before, releasing stress isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Sometimes that release is physical, a walk, a stretch, a breath. Other times it's emotional, crying, writing, speaking to someone safe. And sometimes it's spiritual. A quiet moment of prayer, a pause for stillness, a moment of gratitude. What matters isn't the method, it's the intention. The silent promise you make to yourself. I'm allowed to feel this. I'm safe to release this. I am not defined by this. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to fight your stress, when you allow it to rise and fall like a wave, you return to yourself. Your mind clears. Your motivation stirs. Your emotional capacity expands. Because once your brain is freed from the tight grip of survival, dopamine begins to flow again. Not because everything is fixed, but because you've stopped waging war against your experience. Make it a practice, a small daily ritual of letting go, even just 5 minutes. Put a hand over your heart. Breathe deep. Name what you're carrying. Then exhale it, not all at once, bit by bit. Teach your body the safety of release. Let your stress speak. Then let it leave. Because when the body rests, the heart breathes. And when the heart breathes, the mind speaks clearly. So ask yourself today, where am I carrying stress that no longer belongs to me? What might it feel like to release instead of resist? Don't wait for a breakdown. Choose the quiet wisdom of release now, because peace isn't something you earn after the work is done. It's part of the work. And here's what happens next. The more you release, the more you rise. Your brain isn't broken. Your soul isn't lazy. You're not unmotivated. You're simply exhausted from chasing balance in a world that never taught you where to look. But the deeper truth is this. Everything you need to heal, to focus, to feel alive again is already within you. Dopamine, that small but mighty chemical, is just a messenger. And what it responds to isn't noise or perfection. It responds to consistency, to intention, to the small acts of self-respect you choose each day. You don't need a radical reinvention. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. What you need is to return to movement, to nourishment, to stillness, to sunlight, to joy, to friendship, to rest, to the daily decisions that quietly tell your nervous system, I am here, I am healing, I am ready to feel again. The Stoics never chased happiness. They cultivated clarity. They didn't numb their emotions. They trained their minds to respond instead of react. And that same clarity, that same steady resilience is within your reach right now, in your body, in your breath. In the next steps you choose after this episode. So don't wait for motivation. Build it. Don't wait for your life to change. Create the conditions that allow you to feel alive again. You have more power than you think. And dopamine? It's not the goal. It's the signal, quietly telling you when you're in alignment and when you're drifting. So, start small. Stay steady. Trust the process. Because improving your mental and emotional well-being isn't about chasing intensity. It's about honoring the basics, deeply, daily. If this episode helped reset your perspective, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more reflections that reconnect you to what truly matters. And above all, keep showing up. Because the smallest habits often build the strongest, most resilient lives.